A lot of woodworkers look down on sapwood. Some even claim it should never be used in fine woodworking projects. Often those views are based upon misinformation about what sapwood is and what the pros and cons are of utilizing it in the project. Today we'll talk about what sapwood is, why you may want to incorporate it in your project, and why you may not want to use it. Even if you're a veteran woodworker, I think you'll learn something in the next few minutes. Trees are not just big solid stalks of wood. They're living organisms, and their bodies, or trunks, are made up of different types of wood cells. Everybody knows you can tell how old a tree is by counting the rings. That's because trees grow from the outside, adding new outer rings with the passing of time. The oldest wood is in the center of the tree, and the youngest is just beneath the bark. The very center of the tree is called the pith. That's where the tree was born, and it remains an unstable, spongy part of the trunk. If there's one part of a board you don't want to use in furniture making, it's the pith. When we made this slab countertop, we cut the pith out and glued the halves back together because we knew that that part of the tree was likely to split or crack or cause problems down the road. Surrounding the pith, in the center of the trunk, is the heartwood. These used to be young, vibrant cells, but over time they were replaced and covered up with newer rings. Waste and other chemical compounds from the tree, its extractives, have seeped inside the heartwood cells, fortifying and hardening them. The heartwood is the strongest part of the trunk, and it's the most desirable for woodworking. The outer rings are the sapwood. These are the living, open cells that transport water and other nutrients up the trunk of the tree to its branches and leaves. The sapwood cells are similar to the heartwood, but they haven't been filled and fortified with extractives. This makes them less durable and sometimes less stable than the heartwood. You can often see the difference between the sapwood and the heartwood by its color, especially in hardwoods. The extractives in the heartwood cells make it darker in color, while the sapwood can be much lighter, even a creamy white. In furniture making, the darker heartwood is traditionally much more desirable than the lighter sapwood, so much so that boards with even a streak of sapwood may often be used only where they're not seen or discarded entirely. On the other hand, some furniture makers embrace these contrasting colors freely and use boards with visible sapwood. In this project, we used walnut sapwood throughout. Not only can such a mix of sapwood and heartwood be attractive, it can also be very economical. You see, the older a tree is, the thinner the sapwood layer around the trunk will be. If you harvest a relatively young tree, though, or one that's been planted in such a way as to encourage fast growth, as many modern sustainable logging operations are prone to do, the boards you get from that tree will contain a lot more sapwood than if they were harvested from the older, more mature trees in an area that hasn't been logged in, say, generations. Obviously, that makes those nice, sapwood-free boards from the older, slow-growing trees more rare and much more expensive. I think that may be one of the reasons sapwood is often considered undesirable. Clear, wide boards without sapwood are more expensive, so they must be better, right? I've even heard woodworkers mock people who like the look of sapwood as if using heartwood exclusively is some sort of status symbol in the craft. You're not a real woodworker if you use sapwood. Besides, you almost never see sapwood in historic furniture, so that reinforces their view. They believe that the masters of the past would never have even let it in their shops. But I'm not sure the masters of the past gave that much thought to sapwood, because there wasn't nearly as much of it around. They were harvesting old-growth trees with very little sapwood in them compared to the younger, faster-growing trees we have today. Beautiful, wide, dark heartwood boards were cheaper and much more abundant, and it just made sense to discard what was only a little bit of sapwood along the edge, just as you would the bark. Surely aesthetics were also a factor. Those with conservative tastes might prefer the look of pure walnut or cherry heartwood. But have you seen the gaudy wallpapers they used back then? I think the Victorians or even earlier generations would have embraced furniture with swirls of light sapwood had it been more commonly available to them. Of course, there are other factors besides aesthetics involved. As I said, sapwood is often less durable compared to heartwood. That may be a factor to consider in certain projects. Sapwood is also less resistant to decay, so that makes it perhaps a poor choice for outdoor projects. And while it's still in the tree, the sapwood is more prone to fungus and insect damage. These things, though, are relatively minor factors for most furniture projects. Sapwood is plenty durable for cabinets and chests and even tables. The biggest argument I hear against using sapwood is about its stability or lack thereof. As we discussed, sapwood cells haven't been filled with the tree's extractives. They're less dense compared to the heartwood, and so they swell more with humidity. This could be a problem because often one side of the board will contain sapwood and the other side will just be heartwood. If the sapwood side swells at a greater rate than the heartwood side, the board may cup or warp. You have to take that into consideration when you're making things like tabletops and doors. But I don't find it to be a problem in projects where the joinery will hold your boards flat. That means that the biggest consideration on whether to use sapwood is appearance. In my opinion, if you're going to use it, you have to have enough of it. A mix of stripes and swirls can look great, but just a little streak of light wood on an otherwise dark project will look out of place. For this reason, some folks try to stain or dye the sapwood to make it blend in with the rest of the board. With some experimentation, that may be possible, but keep in mind that many species of wood naturally change color over time. You may get a good match now, but it may stand out like a sore thumb when the heartwood has darkened with age. I personally like sapwood when used creatively. Whether you choose to embrace it or discard it is up to your personal tastes and the type of project you're building. I hope this video helps you decide what's best for your next project. We'll see you next time. If you sharpen your tools by hand, do yourself a favor. Try one of Trend's diamond stones. You can start with a card, but before long, you'll want a full bend stone because these things cut fast, they stay perfectly flat, and you can go from stone to strop to wood and be back to work in under a minute. I'll link to my favorites in the notes below this video. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.